Hi, everybody, and welcome to the press. I'm Ryan Ballantyne. It's great to have you here with us for the first video version of the show. For the last couple of years, we've done this show as a podcast, audio only, and now we're expanding it to GNN TV, and we're bringing this to you as a video show each and every week. But for those of you who have enjoyed the audio version of the press over the last couple of years, it's not going anywhere. We're still here, and we'll still do the audio versions of the show. It'll just be a visual component that you can check out. We're very excited about that. So we start off a new PGA Tour season this week. We've got the Sentry in Hawaii. Talk about that tournament and that tournament specifically. That is the only PGA Tour event, obviously, this week, and it is the only event on the docket, period. We don't have LIV for really about a month until February. We don't have the DP World Tour individual events until a couple of weeks from now when they kick off everything in Dubai. We've got the LPGA toward the back end of the month with the Hilton Tournament of Champions. So we've got basically the PGA Tour for a while. We'll also have the Korn Ferry Tour back in action in a couple of weeks' time, and you can catch all of our recaps of that show, the Road to French Lick, on GNN TV. That all said, let's get into talking about the Sentry. So this is the second year for this tournament being in this format. It's traditionally been the Tournament of Champions, right? It's been a tournament that was reserved for players that won in the season prior, as well as the Tournament of Champions defending champion, right? So that'd be Chris Kirk in this case. However, the tournament format, the eligibility criteria changed for 2024. And that meant that players who had won a PGA Tour event, an official PGA Tour event of any kind in the 2023 season, they got in, as well as any player who finished in the top 50 in the FedEx Cup final rankings, the eligible players in that ranking. Those are the players that got into the field. So that expanded the field. Last year, it expanded the field to 59 players. This year, we've got 60 players. There could have been 3 more players in the end. We had 3 who qualified and chose not to participate. Tommy Fleetwood, Shane Lowry, and of course, Rory McIlroy, who never participates. He never competes in this tournament. He prefers to start the year in Dubai. It's just kind of how his cadence works. So we've got 60 players in the field. It's a 72-hole event. There is no cut. So lowest score wins, good old-fashioned 72-hole stroke play. Nothing fancy here. But this is a truly unique golf course on the PGA Tour schedule. And I think that's what I like most about it, is that it is different. And it starts the year differently. So we're going to go over the Kapalua Plantation course a little bit, talk about the golf course, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the odds for the outright markets. We'll talk about horses for courses. We'll talk about our model results, past champions. We'll bring it all together here in this single episode this week. Most weeks we do multiple episodes. If we have other tournaments from other tours, we'll bring that into a second episode. So one episode each week based on the PGA Tour event, primary PGA Tour event of the week, full model, full rundowns we're going to do here today. And then when additional tours are involved, we'll bring those in for additional episodes each week. So let's talk about the tournament. Let's talk about the Plantation course. Again, $20 million purse this week. This is a signature event, one of 8 on the year. This one has its own criteria uniquely for the one that we've gone over already. $3.6 million to the winner. And then they engineer the payout otherwise. So first, second, and third are kind of standard payout numbers, and then it kind of starts to change based on how many players are in the field. But pretty much get $50,000 just for showing up regardless. It may be a little bit lower than that this year. We haven't seen the final payout. 700 FedEx Cup points to the winner. That's the case with all the signature events. A 750, you get for winning a major championship or the players, but you get 700 this week. So a great start. Get you into a really good position to be back into the top 50. If you win this week, obviously you're back in this event next year as a winner. Kapalua's Plantation course, as I said, is one of my favorites for a couple different reasons. One, it's a Bill Coore, Ben Crenshaw design. So Coore and Crenshaw, this was one of their kind of earlier courses. They've evolved tremendously in the basically 25 years since this tournament debuted here in 1999. They've updated this golf course a couple of different times. They've made it longer. It's one of the longer golf courses on the PGA Tour. We're going to get back to that in a minute. It's also the only par 73 golf course on the PGA Tour. There's one more par 5 then par 3. The rest are par 4s. So you got 2 par 5s on each side. You've got 3 par 3s. Rest are par 4s. And there you go. There's your par 73. That's how you construct that golf course. At 7,596 yards, this is one of the longer scorecard lengths on the PGA Tour. And I think when people just see that number, if you ever see that number, and you go, okay, well, that's a lot. This is a long golf course. And yes, in terms of scorecard yardage, it feels that way. However, it doesn't play that way whatsoever. I want to give a shout out to Rick Rungood, who did a great video on this. It's something I've noticed but never really put the numbers to. If you look at the average length of hole at the Plantation course, it's the third longest on the PGA Tour, at least compared to last year. The BMW Championship had the longest average length, and that's in part because they were playing basically an 8,000-yard golf course at elevation to knock it down to about 7,200 yards in the end. However, even if you took that out, you still got, in terms of average length, one of the longest average length holes ratings on the PGA Tour. However, it also has one of the lowest average approach shot lengths on the PGA Tour, about 108, 109 yards on the average. And the primary reason for that is slope. It's slope and how firm the ground is. Remember, this is a resort. This is a resort course. Resort courses are thought to be designed to be relatively easy. They've got to be scoreable for almost any kind of player. Even with a $550 green fee, which is what it is these days, in peak season at Kapalua on the Plantation, this is still a golf course that's designed for the average person, not just a professional. So you got to keep that in mind. You also have to keep in mind that the biggest defense of this golf course is wind. And so it being a resort course, Corin Crenshaw wanted to design wide playing corridors, huge fairways, huge greens, so that a player could compete in pretty much any set of conditions and not feel completely overwhelmed by the wind. So we're not going to get crazy amounts of wind. We'll talk about the weather with a few weeks. Weather really plays a significant or can play a significant role in the schedule in the course of the week. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But you have wide landing areas. I mean, the 18th, par 5 18th is a great example. At one point, the fairway is almost 95 yards wide. You almost can't miss. And the unique thing about that is the way it's contoured is that if you hit it to one, it's basically all going to funnel to one spot anyway, regardless of where you hit it. If you're a standard kind of PGA Tour player, you're going to hit it about 400 some odd yards. The longest drives in PGA Tour history have happened on this golf course. Tiger Woods has that number, although it's considered unofficial, but he has that number, 490 something. I mean, you can have eye-popping drives on this golf course, particularly on 18 with run out when the wind is going in the right direction. That all said, weather forecast for this week looks very generous. Highs 80, 81, 82, 83, basically every day. For the first couple of days, you've got wind that's coming out of the northwest at 19 miles per hour in the first day. So that's going to be the really difficult day for scoring. And that actually dissipates and starts to rotate over the course of the week. So it goes down from about 19 to 12 to 10 to about 5 to 10 on the final day. So final day should be more of a shootout. First day should be a little bit more of an attempt to kind of hold on. The way that the course is set up, it can play super easy because of the way that the wind works for half the golf course, and the other half you're playing really into it. So there are a lot of shorter par 4s on this golf course. They're often playing uphill, and they're often playing into the wind. Putting surfaces are huge. They are enormous. You're going to hit a lot of greens here this week if you're a professional player. You're going to be hitting a lot of wedges into greens, so you're going to hit a lot of greens. What really can get you into trouble is being a little too aggressive. They have some hole locations here that you're really not firing at. You're trying to fire something that will run in there or something that will spin back if you get the case of a wedge. Really just don't want to take on those hole locations that could lead you over a cliff, basically into the junk or out of play into something nasty. So there's going to be a fair amount of conservative golf at times, but you cannot make bogeys and double bogeys, especially double bogeys. This is a golf course where you have to be able to score. Yes, it's a par 73. However, if you look at what you've got to shoot here to just kind of maintain par, kind of regular par against strokes gained, it's about 68-ish. 68.3, 68.4 is really what you need to shoot here every single day to not lose strokes to the field. Don't think about the 73 if you're a player. That doesn't matter. It's just a number. You could call this place par 72, 71, 70. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. What you're looking at is the field average here. That's 68. You need to be able to play this golf course. You need to be able to make hay on the shorter par fours, hang on to the longer par threes, and get the par fives. If you can make pars the rest of the way, you're shooting 5, 6 under. Realistically, you probably need to get somewhere between 25 and 30 under to win this tournament. 29 under won last year. We've seen deeper than 30 win before. The couple of years where you had John Rahm make a big comeback to win in 23. You had Cam Smith, who overcame John Rahm. There's a lot of commonalities here in terms of players who kind of tend to do well in runs. Think about your Jeff Ogilvy's, your Stuart Appleby's, your Steve Strickers, your Dustin Johnsons, Justin Thomas's, players who have done well here consistently for a 2-3 year run over the years. And we're going to talk about those players as well as those who are good course fits based on their history, even if they haven't won here recently. Before we get into that, let's get into the odds table for this week. Let's go over the top of the table, and then we'll get down into the 40s and go from there. So just picking off of this list, you got Xander Schauffele, who leads the market at plus 650 or 13-2. You've got Colin Morikawa and Justin Thomas at 13-1. Thomas is a 2-time champion of this event. Morikawa has had a couple of different deep runs in this tournament. Should have won in 23, did not win in 23. By the way, I had John Rahm live. About 5 holes left. Wound up getting a real nice price on him to win. Ludwig is 16-1. Patrick Cantlay, who's probably your second best horse for course play this week, is at 18-1, along with Sanjay. Hideki is 22-1. Akshay Bhatia, the injured Victor Hovland, is 28-1. Your 30s are Corey Connors and Sahith Theegala. Benon and Sam Burns are 33-1. We're going to come back to Sam Burns in a little while. JT Poston actually has a surprisingly good record in this tournament. He has 2 priors, 5th and 10th or 11th. So he knows how to play this golf course pretty well, seems pretty comfortable, had a nice finish. He's 35-1. Adam Scott, we're going to come back to 40-1, has already kind of been bet down from futures markets for this event that were placed out, but he's someone you want to keep an eye on here. Tony Finau, Bob McIntyre, and Wyndham Clark are the other 40s. There are guys I didn't put on this graphic. Obviously, I didn't go past 40-1 here. A couple of long shots I will get into a little bit later, but Jake Knapp is someone I want you to think about at 175-1 for a couple of different reasons. We look at the horses for courses for this week, right? There's a caveat to having horses for courses for this tournament. And that is that historically speaking, you only had winners here, right? So there was this kind of weird dynamic that happened every year when it was like a 35-40 player field, in that you had players who won a lot, right? They won like every year or every other year, or they've been there a bunch, right? They found a way to get into the tournament pretty regularly. So they had experience on the golf course. And experience matters at the Plantation course. First-timers tend to not do well. Even first, second, and third-timers tend not to do well. So look at Ludwig. Look at any number of players. Sahith was not good his first time out. Great second time out. Runner-up. So it takes some time to get used to playing this style of golf course, just kind of acclimating to a different brand. And you had this tournament then where you had a bunch of first-time winners, 7 to 12 first-time winners every year who basically had no chance because this was their first appearance. They had no experience. It's a golf course that requires it. They were toast before they got started. That's going to be changing going into the future, right? If you can get into the top 50 year after year after year, which you're kind of set up to be able to do given the point system and the access of the signature events, you're going to get more experience here, which means you're going to have a more consistent field from one year to the next, which is going to make it a little bit different in terms of the horse for course category. But that all said, these players on this graphic, Colin Morikawa is your best horse for course play here, in my view, in terms of total results. I would say Patrick Cantlay is right up there with them, basically in the top 15 every year. A couple of fourth place finishes. 4 of the last 5 years, he's been in the top 15 here. Xander Schauffele's a winner here in 2019. Doesn't have an amazing record otherwise, but obviously has exhibited the capability to win on this golf course. Sanjay M has a similar kind of set of record in terms of top 15 finishes to Xander. No wins here. Played very well in the fall. Has been pretty active. Has had a great year. I wish he won more. He would be He's kind of a value play because he doesn't win often enough given his skill level. But his short game is extremely good. He's got the putting capacity to win this tournament in what he may lack in other places, particularly off the tee, really doesn't come into play here. And that's why he's able to play so consistently well. Justin Thomas is a two-time champion here, won a couple of different times, 17 and 20. So he knows his way around this golf course. The kind of knock on Justin Thomas for so long was that he won events outside of the mainland United States, which was a big part of his career, big part of his CV. But he did play some really good golf in the fall. He had a second place at the Zozo Championship, third place at the Hero World Challenge. So a little bit of competitive golf, so to speak, not a hit and giggle in the Zozo, where he didn't quite get the job done. Nico Echeverria did. And then obviously played well in the hit and giggle 20 players at Bahamas. Had some win there, had something a little bit more resembling what you're going to see this week. So I think that's a good guy to look at this week. Max Homa actually has a surprisingly decent record in this tournament. He started really well in his defense at the Nedbank Golf Challenge and then just fell off the earth once the conditions got tough. I don't know which guy's going to show up, the guy that played well on Thursday in South Africa or the guy that got blown away by the weather otherwise. So we'll see what happens there. Matt Fitzpatrick also has a pretty decent record in this tournament. And take of that what you will. He had a very lackluster 2024 after a career year in 23. We'll see how he bounces back, but he is an interesting guy to keep your mind on here. Let's look at the past champions for the last 5 years. We've got this graphic up to prove a couple of different things. One, we want to look at the different types of players who have won here. If you look at the last 5 years, first of all, we had 5 different champions, right? And you go back for that, you had Justin Thomas win in 17. So really you've had, I think, 8 different champions in the last 8 years, 7 different champions in the last 7 years. So it is hard to repeat here, but it's not hard to do well again here, as we talked about, because you have experience. Hard to do well. But if you look at the winners here, Chris Kirk was 100, 150 to 1 shot, depending on where you got him. John Rahm was a favorite. Cam Smith was basically a favorite, 20-ish to 1. Harris English was a little bit longer of a shot, 25, 30. And then Justin Thomas was a favorite. So more often than not, you're going to get a favorite that wins here in the last 20 years. Maybe someone in their mid-20s to 1 to win. And then you get the rare long shot. Jonathan Burr was the other kind of long shot. If you look at Ron Kloss, does a great job with BetSperts and does the rabbit hole. He does some great research into past champions and their odds. I didn't put that up here just because I wanted to kind of communicate the point that Chris Kirk is the outlier in the honor roll of champions of this event in the last 2 decades. He is the only player to have been triple digits to 1 to win this tournament. A couple of reasons for that, however. We alluded to them a few minutes ago. One being that you had a shorter field here, right? You had a 30-player field. If you look at the odds for the Hero, right? You had a 20-player field. Matthew Bavon was the longest shot at 70 to 1. Well, you've got 60 players here now, and the longest shot is Peter Malnati at 600 to 1. You're not even going to think about him. So having more players kind of expands out the range of possibilities in terms of odds. Also having more players with more capability, not just players who won a tournament who could be one-offs. You got higher quality players in there too. So much more clustered together, which means I think it's more likely than not that you're going to find someone who's 20, 30, 40 to 1 that wins than someone who's 75 or greater to win this. That said, I still like Jake Napolot at 175 to 1. He's really the only guy I like in that super deep range. And that's because of where he stands in our model. So let's go into that. Each and every week for our members at golfnewsnet.com, you can sign up for $40 a year. We are actually, this week, it's our final week of our quote unquote fall special where you can get 2 years for $60 or 3 years of membership for $80. So you're getting a pretty great deal there, actually. Love you to have to be a member and sign up. But either way, we give our top 10 here every single week. And my formula for my model looks at longer term performance, looks at 1 and 2 year windows, looks at the last 10 PGA Tour events played, looks at the last 3 years of results in this tournament if you've got them, and then kind of puts it all together with different weights and measures, and then also has an additional comparison of the quality of competition this week and how you play in those types of depths of field. Put it all together. Most weeks you get something that looks like you would expect, right? But every once in a while you get some surprises. So let's look at the top 10 here. Xander Schauffele's number 1 with Scottie Scheffler out. You knew that was going to be the situation. Ludwig is number 2. You've got a qualifier for him, right? Coming off of surgery. Although what that looks like, I don't know. Also, you would expect Ludwig could just crush it around this place. Just hit the ball as far as he wants and hit wedges in and win and dominate. Hasn't happened yet. Wasn't great in his debut. Doesn't mean it can't. Patrick Cantlay, horse for course, also just a consistent player. 3rd on the list. Adam Scott is the guy that kind of surprised me here. He's 18th in the world, right? I mean, I guess it shouldn't be that surprising, but he's gone about his business kind of quietly to get to that position. It's not like he wins much, but he gets himself in position a lot, rakes up a lot of points, hoovers up a lot of FedEx Cup points and money, and all of a sudden you're 18th in the world. He came out very well in this model. Sam Burns also came out very well in this model. He is a guy obviously tends to play well in these seaside grasses better, right? Bermudas, warm weather grasses, that's more his style, the kind of creep and grow, not your bent grasses or your Kentucky bluegrasses. This kind of fits him. Decky had a great year last year. Doesn't have the best record in this tournament. Doesn't have a horrible record either, but he's 6th. Sanjay's 7th. Again, great course history, very consistent performer. Tony Finau is 8th. Corey Connors is 9th. And Colin Morikawa is 10th, which is actually kind of surprising to me, given his record in this tournament, and also given the year that he had last year. But if you look at a 2-year window where he wasn't very good in 2023, that's what drags him down. And he kind of has the ebb and flow of that. And obviously, these guys didn't play the fall, right? Typically, in weeks, we would look at how players did in the last 10 PGA Tour events played. And we would use a short-term model to compare to the long-term model, right? Really, you don't have that. But your success stories in the fall are JT Poston, right? He was pretty much a one and done. Played the RSM, T5 there, but one and done kind of guy, right? Matt McNeely finally got his PGA Tour win. Good for him. Pretty decent throughout the fall. We'll see if that's a jumping off point for him. Matt McCarty came right from the Corn Ferry Tour with the 3-win promotion, gets onto the PGA Tour, wins the Black Desert event. I am actually kind of curious if that translates at all here too, because those are super wide landing areas out in Utah. A little bit of wind possible, very scoreable place. Yes, I've talked about the need to have experience on this plantation course. So they kind of run into one another. But if you're going to try to find a course comp out of the fall, there it is right there for Matt McCarty. So maybe a guy at that kind of 125 to 1 range that's interesting to look at. Maybe a Nick Dunlap as well. I really like Nick Dunlap. I think he's a longer odd player. He also doesn't have a ton of data. And also a lot of the data that he has from last year, other than his wins, was bad. Once he won at the American Express, which, by the way, hurts him in our model because you only get 2 rounds worth of data there. You don't get 4 rounds. And you don't necessarily get the good data that you get from the other 2 courses outside the host course at the Amex. And then you've got the second win out in Tahoe that doesn't have strokes gained with it either. So that hurts his ranking because there aren't strokes gained associated with it. But I do like Nick Dunlap a whole heck of a lot going into this week and really throughout the course of the season. There are a couple of guys that I do want to get on your radar from the Corn Ferry Tour for this season. We will save those for the Sony Open and beyond. A lot of the guys who graduated from the Corn Ferry Tour are not even going to get into Sony. Maybe the kind of top 12, 13 of those players will get in, but it's a difficult tournament to get into with that kind of status. So we'll talk about those guys next week. This is the field for this week. It's a really fun tournament. Again, I would look toward Justin Thomas. I think he's an interesting play. Adam Scott is a great play. Came out very high in the ranking. Sungjae Im, I like a whole heck of a lot. I would look at a Nick Dunlap and a Jake Knapp as super long plays. And then maybe you want to think about one more in there somewhere. But those are my outrights to win. And I think I would tend to favor live betting in this tournament because things can change very quickly. So I would pick a lighter card this week, 3-4 players. But you can make big runs on this golf course in a short number of holes. You can go out there and shoot a 60, 61, 62, and all of a sudden catapult yourself into the tournament. If you can catch someone in the middle of that run, then you might be able to get good live odds on them, give yourself a better chance at cashing out at the end of the week ahead of what you put in. That's going to do it for us this week on the show. Thanks so much for spending some time with me. I appreciate it. Love some feedback on the new format. If you enjoy watching the show, I appreciate it. If you're listening as a audio podcast subscriber, I appreciate the feedback too. Hopefully communicate everything that goes well between the audio version and the video version. Want to give you just as much context as we've always done, just now with the added visual components available to you as well. We'll be back next week with another show. We'll talk about the Sony Open, and we'll go in depth on that tournament for the first full field event of 2025. I'm Ryan Ballingy. Thanks so much for watching. We will talk to you next time on The Press.